Listen, it's very simple. I see the name Gael García Bernal, and I click.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Yes.
All right? Watch out.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and today's video is a review of the new Prime Video film, Cassandro, starring Gael García Bernal, an actor who has never phoned in a performance in his life, a national treasure to Mexico, and one of the least annoying Nepo babies working in show business today. A quick obligatory reminder that there is an ongoing SAG and WGA strike, but I am proceeding with reviews because of SAG's endorsement of a Variety article stating that reviews and coverage by critics and entertainment journalists were still permitted. And as always, donation links to help these workers on strike will be in the pinned comment. I had not heard of this film, Cassandro, until a couple of weeks ago when they started to really kick off more of the promotional push in the lead up to its release. I got an email in my inbox about the film, and all I saw was Gael García Bernal's name, and I went, yes. Whatever this is, yes. And then I watched the trailer and saw it was a biopic about a famous Mexican luchador. I know nothing about wrestling in any country, but again, Gael is playing the lead, and that was enough to get my attention. The film's basic synopsis, as presented in the press packet, reads, when Saúl Armendariz starts competing in the macho world of Mexican Lucha Libre wrestling, he's always cast as the runt. After he meets Sabrina, Saúl gains not only a professional trainer, but also a friend who helps him create a new character in the ring. Together, they debut Cassandro, a radical subversion of Lucha Libre's stereotypical role known as the Exótico. Flamboyant and powerful, Cassandro turns Lucha on its head, but Cassandro also upends Saúl's own life, throwing into tumult his relationships with his mother Yocasta, his secret lover Gerardo, and his absent father Eduardo. Being that I don't follow wrestling and I wasn't familiar with Cassandro before seeing this film, I will not be commenting on whether or not the film is historically accurate. I'm not the right critic to be able to nitpick any of those details, if that's even something any of you are interested in knowing about. The first point I want to highlight is the action, and by that I mean the wrestling itself. I was very surprised and impressed by the wrestling because from what I could tell, Gael was doing a lot of those stunts himself, and he was doing them very well. Occasionally you would have a shot from a certain angle and edited in such a way that you could tell it was clearly being done by a skilled stunt performer and not Gael himself, but quite a few shots had a longer duration and Gael's face being visible, so you knew it was him. And with all due respect, I do not believe this film had the budget to be doing a James Cameron's Avatar level of VFX work in order to swap Gael's face onto the body of a stunt performer without it being clockable. So it was Gael doing a lot of these wrestling moves, and I so appreciate the amount of work that would have gone into him learning these skills in order to be able to perform them in the way that he did. Moreover, it's not just about the physical movements of the wrestling stunts themselves, but the fact that these Lucha Libre matches have a sort of story built into each match. Gael has to act as his character, acting out the Cassandro persona, on top of doing all of these difficult wrestling moves. He's climbing on these ropes and doing these jumps and flips, and I just really did not expect to be as wowed as I was by the physicality of the wrestling matches. Maybe that's also just because I don't watch wrestling, so everything about the viewing experience was bound to feel more fresh. Another prominent facet of the Cassandro film is the relationships. I touched on this briefly when sharing the film's synopsis, but I found Saúl's relationships to all be compelling in different ways. They draw you in, but they also serve as a means of informing you further about who Saúl is. There were a few relationships that really stood out to me when watching. Those included his relationship with his mother Yocasta, his relationship with his father Eduardo, his relationship with his lover Gerardo, and his relationship with his friend/trainer Sabrina. Saúl's relationship with his mother was so special. The actors had this wonderfully warm chemistry that made the mother-son dynamic feel real. It was easy to understand just how much his mother has influenced who he is as a person and as this flamboyant exotico persona of Cassandro. The film was also really effective in making you feel the weight of the strained relationship between Saúl and his father. Even though you see the father character very little on screen, he feels like this looming presence, a dark cloud of sorts that hangs over him. They are estranged from one another because of homophobia. I know, it's the 1980s, which means that it's especially bad. You've also got the tragic love story of him and his lover, who is married to a woman with whom he has children. And on the one hand, you watch this and you want to shake Saul by the shoulders because you want him to be with someone that isn't so unavailable. But on the other hand, you can't help but have compassion to the fact that the heart wants what the heart wants. But for as stressful as that relationship could be at times, you had Saul's relationship with his friend Sabrina to balance things out in the overall viewing experience, because she supports him, she believes in him, long before he starts to find all this massive success as Cassandro. It's very much embodying that concept of found family, and their bond was also something really special to watch. Maybe it can feel like it's overshadowed a bit by how abundant the material is that emphasizes the depth of Saul's love for his mother, but I found it to be increasingly clear the further I went along in the film that it was ultimately the women in Saul's life that were his greatest sources of love and support.
This guy right here is an exótico.
Stop wasting my time.
Toma forma de canción.
I think if people wanted to look for something to nitpick about Cassandro, they could probably say something about pacing, about how the structure of the story is constructed, or how certain flashbacks are incorporated to inform the audience of further context about Saul's origins that have shaped him into the person we see him as in the present day of the storyline. But for me, I can't help but mostly rate the film favorably. Not only because I think Gael García Bernal is an exceptional performer and ridiculously charismatic, but because emotionally, the film is effective. The storytelling is emotionally intimate and introspective, so you really feel like you get to know who Saul is and you connect to him, regardless of what's going on structurally. When you do what I do of reviewing films or television series, it's easy to get caught up in being precise about clinically assessing the execution of filmmaking and storytelling, but an important thing to remember is that the ultimate aim, more often than not, when people are putting together a feature film is to create something that will emotionally resonate with the audience. My biggest worry when watching this film was I knew that it was going to be a period piece about a trailblazer of the LGBT plus community in a particular field, in this case, Lucha Libre, and I was just really hoping that I wasn't going to be subjected to watching any extremely physically violent attacks or any other type of violent bigotry that would be presented in a way that would ultimately mostly feel like you as the audience are being attacked with the hate that the character is receiving. But Cassandro as a film strikes this really effective balance of acknowledging that you are in the 1980s, that you've got a crowd that is not particularly keen on rooting for an exótico, but not having to be overly graphic or excessive in contextualizing the homophobia Saul has had to deal with. To make this clear, in case you're watching this review without having seen the film and without having some understanding of Lucha Libre, the exótico is a type of character in Lucha Libre that does not wear a mask and tends to be more flamboyant. You don't have to be LGBT plus in real life to play an exótico character in Lucha Libre, and before Cassandro, the standard way of doing things was that exóticos were not the ones who would get to win matches. The storyline of matches would conclude with the exóticos losing, and that was part of Cassandro's journey as a trailblazer. It wasn't just the fact that Saul is gay in real life, outside of the ring, but the fact that he became a star and was able to win because of, I suppose it was his skill and charisma and showmanship. At least that's how it was presented in the film. Like I said before, I'm not the right critic to be able to historically fact check the film on how accurate it is. Another relationship that I didn't mention before is Saul's relationship with Cassandro as a character is just as important to the overall storytelling as his relationship with the different characters I already mentioned. Him developing Cassandro as a character ends up being a way of him being able to develop more confidence in himself. And to be honest, when I really reflect on the viewing experience, I like that Saul's rise to stardom as Cassandro and the way the story is structured, I like that it didn't have this linear rise and fall that you're used to seeing in a lot of Hollywood films. It ebbs and flows with both personal and professional success and setbacks. So overall, what ends up happening is that you're left with this resounding emotional core of resilience. That's what the story is about. It's showing you that even if Cassandro gets knocked down literally in the ring, or Saul figuratively in his life, that he can and will get back up again. And since Cassandro is this trailblazer, you as the viewer can't help but be swept up in that messaging, so that by watching his journey in the film, you also get inspired while you're watching it, and you feel like you can also be the one to get back up even if you've been knocked down. Overall, I enjoyed Cassandro. I always expected that Gael would be excellent, even just from watching the trailer and seeing him peacock around the wrestling ring in his fabulous outfits, but I was pleasantly surprised by how emotionally resonant the storytelling was. Admittedly, Gael is responsible for a fair bit of why that is, because he's the one you're staying with for more or less the entire runtime, but other components of the filmmaking process, like the script, directing, editing, all of those types of things, they all collectively enhance what Gael does and how you as the audience experience it. I briefly wondered at the end if they were going to pull a switch up by having the real Cassandro pop up to do the final sequence in the film, but then I had to remind myself that not every movie ends with a Baz Luhrmann's Elvis needle drop. The ending of Cassandro was very effective though. When the camera had that close-up on Gael's face and he's just emoting the full weight of what Saul, is feeling in that moment, and how it's the culmination of everything he's experienced for his life and for the runtime that has come before that scene, it just really got to me. I was very emotionally affected by it, but in a good way. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help my channel, to help support a small channel grow. Thank you to my patrons, and I will be back in the next one, which is a video I have already filmed because I had already started writing that video before I got my Cassandro press screener. Bye!